The phone call started with laughter, but it ended with a quiet that made my blood run cold. I was telling my aunt how excited I was for my sister's big day, describing the deep green dress hanging in my closet and the expensive kitchen set I had wrapped up on my counter. Then came the long pause. My aunt gently asked if I was joking, before dropping the news that the wedding had actually taken place the weekend before. I sat in my dark living room, staring at social media photos of a vineyard celebration I was never invited to. Everyone was there, from distant cousins to my beaming parents, all posing like our family was completely whole. There was no missing space, no note about my absence, just a wall of happy comments. I realized in that moment that nobody forgot to send an invitation. They made a deliberate choice to leave me out and lied to everyone else about why I was missing. My name is Hannah, and at 33 years old, I had spent my entire adult life being the responsible backbone of my family. I worked long hours as an accountant in Chicago, saved aggressively, and always stepped in whenever someone needed help. When my father had surgery, I took time off to nurse him. When my sister smashed her car, I drove overnight to help her. I was the person who fixed problems, paid off debts, and never asked for anything in return. I had even bought a quiet cabin in Wisconsin, envisioning a peaceful spot where our whole family could gather for holidays. I spent years sacrificing personal vacations just to create a space for memories that were apparently never going to happen. Looking back at my text messages, my sister had stopped replying months ago after asking subtle questions about guest numbers. She knew back then that I would not be standing by her side, yet she let me keep believing I was part of her special day. When my mother texted me a generic greeting the next morning, completely ignoring the massive secret, I finally broke my habit of replying instantly. I waited until the following day to call my parents, hoping for a simple misunderstanding or a heartfelt apology. Instead, my mother let out a small sigh of frustration, acting as though my hurt feelings were an inconvenient nuisance. My father chimed in, claiming my serious personality would have ruined the light-hearted atmosphere of the event. They calmly explained that the family had discussed it together and decided the weekend would run smoother without my presence. They claimed my high standards and intense work habits made people nervous, so leaving me behind was actually doing me a favor. Hearing my own parents defend erasing me from a major milestone left me speechless. I hung up the phone feeling a cold, quiet anger replaced the deep sorrow that had kept me awake all night. Sitting in my kitchen, I began looking through old bank statements and memory boxes, finally seeing my life without the rose-colored glasses. I remembered the holidays where I was relegated to the couch and the birthdays that were quietly ignored. Every time I had stepped up to pay off my sister's credit cards or cover my parents' home repairs, they did not see a loving relative. They saw an endless supply of money and labor that required zero emotional investment in return. A few days later, my aunt reached out wanting to meet at a small diner far away from the rest of the relatives. She looked nervous as she slid an old folder across the booth, apologizing for keeping quiet for so many years. She revealed that my sister had openly resented me during the planning process, throwing tantrums about not wanting my success to outshine her moment. But the folder contained something far worse than petty jealousy or wedding drama. My aunt handed me a stack of official papers regarding my late grandmother's estate from 3 years prior. My parents had told me there was no inheritance left, claiming end-of-life medical bills had wiped out all her savings. But the documents proved my grandmother had willed a valuable city condo directly to me, complete with a personal note praising my steady nature. The property had been sold behind my back using a completely forged signature on a legal authorization form. My father had faked my signature to sell the property for over $400,000, using the cash to clear my sister's massive failed investments. They had stolen my rightful inheritance to cover up her financial disasters, all while continuing to ask me for monthly allowances. Sitting in that quiet booth, watching my aunt shake her head in shame, the last remaining threads of affection I had for my parents completely snapped. I did not scream or cause a scene, nor did I rush over to confront my parents while emotions were high. Instead, I quietly went through all my bank accounts and cut off every single financial tie connecting me to them. I canceled my sister's car coverage, shut down my mother's streaming subscriptions, and revoked the monthly medical allowance I sent my father. I removed my name from their memberships and locked down my credit profiles, so no one could ever use my identity again. My close friend stopped by that evening, reviewing the stolen property paperwork with a fierce look in her eyes. She reminded me that I had spent my entire life protecting people who treated me like an utility rather than a person. She urged me to head up to my Wisconsin cabin, step away from the drama, and let my legal counsel handle the upcoming fallout. It was time to stop being the family safety net and start protecting my own future. Up at the cabin, surrounded by quiet woods and still lake water, I finally opened an old storage box from my grandmother. Tucked beneath old photographs was an unread duplicate letter from the estate attorney, confirming the original property transfer details from years ago. My parents had intercepted the first notice at their house, carefully hiding the truth so they could orchestrate the sale. Holding that letter by the fireplace, I knew there was no going back to the way things were. My phone eventually began buzzing continuously with panicked messages from my parents, as their card payments failed, and their accounts were frozen. They demanded to know why the money had stopped, completely unaware that I now held full proof of their legal crimes. I ignored every single incoming call, choosing instead to forward the entire folder of evidence directly to a land attorney. The people who erased me from their family were about to face the consequences of their actions. Standing on the wooden dock, watching the evening sun sink below the trees, I felt lighter than I had in years. I realized that being alone was far better than being surrounded by people who only valued what I could offer them. I packed away the green dress for good, and chose to invest my energy into a life built on self-respect. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button and watch the next video on your screen right now.